What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be doing the long-awaited Sketchbook tour. So if you're new here or you don't know who I am, my name is Skywalker, and in addition to making music, something that most of you guys may not know about me is I also do visual art as well. Now before we get into the Sketchbook tour, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of background on my artistic journey and how I got to where I am today. So I've been an artist my whole life pretty much, and it pretty much took me my whole life to figure out that I was actually an artist. Now let me explain what I mean by that. So basically, I've never considered myself an artist, due to imposter syndrome, among many other things, but I've always surrounded myself with art. I've always enjoyed the process of making art. When I was little, I was just bored at home. I used to just scribble on paper, and once I started to see image forming in my scribbles, I would just, start drawing whatever I saw. And, I had a sense of pride, back then in my creations, because after all, they came from scribbles. So, as I got older, I would still draw here and there, but school got in the way of that a little bit. When I was in 5th grade, I would make comic books with my friends sometimes, but I still never considered myself an artist. It was just something I did in my free time. And I had classmates who would draw basically like every day, and they could draw just from their mind, and it would be amazing. And I'm like, I could never do that. And so, due to that fact, I never considered myself an artist. I could come up with a cool concept, create a weird looking car that nobody's ever seen before, but when I saw other kids my age who were able to, copy a sports car exactly how it is from a drawing book or from a magazine, or this one girl, she used to be obsessed with Sonic characters, and she could draw any Sonic character in any kind of position just from her head. Like, she wouldn't even need a reference photo. Like, to me, that was being a true artist. I just felt like I didn't have, whatever it took. So in addition to feeling like that, growing up in this type of society, as an artist, you're told pretty much that your art is never going to be able to evolve into a career, or at least that's what they want you to think. We're surrounded by art every day, yet we still tend to pick up this belief that somehow if we're going to be an artist, we have to be a starving artist. But I digress. That's a conversation for another time. So when I got to high school, I was still taking a couple art classes. That's actually where I got a couple of these sketchbooks from. So, when you're in an art class, they usually give you like a prompt of different sketches that you have to do maybe within a week or a certain amount of time. Now, whenever I got a prompt, if I liked the idea for the prompt, I'll go all out on it. And, if it was something I didn't really care for or didn't want to do or wasn't interested in, I would just get it done as quick as possible. I didn't really put any time or effort into it, and that was it. I didn't draw a lot on my free time. I didn't draw every day. So still, not really considering myself an artist. I may make some good art every once in a while, but don't really consider myself an artist. So as I grew up, I took a couple art classes in high school, and high school is around that time where you really start considering what you want to be. And I really never took the time to think about it. I finally started making music, but that's really the only thing I had possibly considered. I didn't think of anything else. So when school and society starts pressuring me and telling me, hey, it's about that time, you need to consider what you want to do, and if music ain't the thing that you're going to do, you're going to need something else. And I sat long and hard with myself, and I was in my animation class at this time, and I was really starting to like animation. Now, I figured if I couldn't do music, I could do animation. Animation I enjoyed enough. It was pretty fun. I like drawing. I like bringing my drawings to life. So why not go with animation? So I figured I made up my mind, and I was gonna go with animation. So I thought. Now once it came time to look at schools, the school that I wanted to go to, I actually didn't think that I would be able to go to with the Chapter 35 benefits I was receiving that was gonna help me attend school. Come to find out later that it actually would have, so I could have pursued that path the whole time. But at the time, I was told that I wasn't going to be able to use the benefits for that type of school, and that I needed a backup plan. So I ended up going to college for criminal justice at a completely different college than I originally intended, which if you want more information on that, you could go check out my video for why I started the Mile High Club. But back to the story. So when I got to college, you know, I obviously had my major declared, but I still picked up art classes when I could, and that's when I got into printmaking. Most of my prints are, you know, put up right now. If you guys are interested in seeing more of them, just go ahead and let me know in the comments, and I'll pull some down for you, let you see them. But I'll show you guys the best print that I made. This print is a 1 of 1. This is my own original concept idea. This was my final project for my printmaking class. Yeah, I just kind of wanted something abstract. You know, this has a bigger story behind it than I'm gonna tell you guys right now. I'll get into it in a different video, but this has become a centerpiece of the brand. Now, when I was in my printmaking class, this was like the one time where I felt like I could really actually be an artist. Like I could see myself living life as an artist. And, you know, it was such a shame that I didn't really get to pursue that a little bit more. You know, that was like, I want to say my last year. Yeah, that was my last year of college that I got into that class. And it was like I discovered something that I should have been doing the whole time I was there. And, you know, I do want to get back into that, but that just kind of made me want to, you know, start getting back into art a little bit. So, you know, that class led me to drawing a little bit more. It led me to painting on canvas. You know, I'd never really painted on canvas before. So that just led me back to, you know, art in general and drawing a little bit more. Still wasn't drawing every day, but if I had an idea or something that came to mind, you know, I went ahead and went for it. So in college, I also was required to buy a couple sketchbooks. You know, I bought a few of them for a few different classes. I used some of them I didn't even touch for years. Yeah, I kind of wanted to preserve the sketchbooks for my good art, you know, and have all my practice art be used on my old high school sketchbooks. So that's what I did. I bought a couple sketchbooks, put them off to the side, and I was using, you know, other, you know, spiral bound sketchbooks for my practice art until one day I brought this sketchbook before it had any stickers or, you know, too much anything in it. I did a self-portrait in it, 2013, and that was basically the only thing I had put in here. And I don't know why, but I had this sketchbook with me in class one day, in my printmaking class, along with the actual sketchbook that I was using, this one. And, you know, my teacher was giving me guidance, or no, not even the teacher, but the teacher's assistants was giving me guidance on the project that I was doing. And just grabbed my notebook and started taking notes, and I was like, I wanted to say something so bad, but I just held it in. You know, I wish she would have done it on this one, but at that moment I was like, okay, well, I guess I can use it a little bit more. Still didn't use it that much more though. But for time's sake, I'm gonna cut off the story time a little bit. I'll go through the story as I go through all the art. I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys a different angle and let you guys see some of the art. So this is my old animation folder from high school. This is where we used to keep some of the art. This is some concept art for my Alpha Skywalker logo. Now, if you've been following along, you should definitely know this one by now. Yeah, this is also a quick sketch for another one of my logos for the microphone lightsaber logo, if you couldn't tell. So if you've ever seen the Vesco Pussy design, this is the first attempt at making that. I made these when I was teaching. We were doing arts and crafts in the class. decided to join in with the students. And this is a little puppet. We had a little puppet theater that we were doing. Now, once I was in college, I was also starting to tattoo a little bit more, so I started apprenticing with this guy who had a shop in LA, and he had just moved out to Chico. He was trying to get set up there, so he gave me a project to color this. These are some characters that I created for my animation class in high school. We got Rick Redrum, and we got Warp. I think this was probably one of my favorite things to do in animation class, besides some of the actual animations we did, which is just the character design. Alright, so we'll start the tour with the sketchbooks that I used in high school. Now, most of the stuff that I actually did in high school is probably ripped out of here already. So we'll start with this one. I think this is the only page I have left in this one that's actually done. Yeah. So this was for my printmaking class in college. These were just some thumbnails of an idea that I was trying to come up with, a music-related idea. I was trying to create a character. Yeah, so this is another one that I used from high school. This is probably the earliest picture that I have on it. Some of the red and blue stuff is newer. This is probably the oldest drawing on here. This is somewhat newish too, but yeah, just kind of random sketches. I might turn these into characters for my story. Just stay tuned on that. Yeah, here goes some animation cycles. This was for my college animation class. It's supposed to be like a little bear or something running. This one is bird flying, obviously. Some random sketching. Now this is 2024. I just kind of wanted to start drawing again, even if it was a little shitty. So yeah, that's basically what this is about. The note's basically saying I'm attempting to draw again, not judge what I create. Saying I gave up halfway through, but I finished it anyways, and yeah, just stuff like that. So yeah, that's this one. So here goes some more little character thumbnails, this time from my college animation class. These were supposed to be characters inspired by a movie called Black Sunday. This was a task that we were given. We had to make characters based off of the movie. So, the executioner is supposed to be like a little witch. And now the story with this is interesting. So, I had a dream one day, and I just saw a lava lamp in my dream where, the lava was actual skulls. And, it was just so powerful of an image that, right then and there when I realized I was dreaming, I'm like, okay, I gotta remember this. When I wake up, I have to draw this. And so I woke up, and, yeah, the first thing I did was start drawing this. All right, and that brings us to these 4 sketchbooks. Now, all of these were bought in college, and like I said, I did not use most of these for a long time. This one I still haven't even really used. It looks so nice, I said, you know what, I'm just not even gonna draw in it. I'm just gonna, write poems and lyrics in it. And I still never finished it for that, which I'm glad, because I actually am gonna start drawing in this. But I am waiting till I finish these 3 that I'm currently working on. So let the sketchbook tour begin. This one kind of just started off, random sketchbook. Had some assignments for a class in here that I just kind of half-assed, like I said I usually do. These are supposed to be some abstract feathers. And then once, I was done with it for school, I never touched it for a while. Then I decided to use it for ideas for my clothing line, for abstract reality. So, still half-assing shit, but at least I'm getting my ideas out. This one is actually on my wall. So these two became hats for the clothing line. I actually have this jersey. It took me a long time to create, but finally created it. This was supposed to be a tattoo idea for somebody. And around here is where things kind of changed. I decided I would get some art books and do some actual art lessons and kind of, reteach myself how to draw, to kind of get rid of imposter syndrome. I work on tattoos. I'm working on a whole comic book / animated series. I figure out why not go back, learn the basics, just to instill the confidence in myself that I felt like all the kids had, who would actually draw every day, that I mentioned earlier in the video. The only thing that separated me from those kids was the actual passion and urge to want to go draw. One of the books that I started had you draw a donut, a bagel, an airplane, and a house to start with, just to see where you're starting at before all the lessons. And then once you finish the lessons, it has you draw some other things. So lesson 1 was the sphere. As you see, I still try to keep it abstract. Lesson 2 is overlapping spheres. And then we got lesson 3 is advanced spheres. Lesson 4 was the cube. Lesson 5 was hollow cubes. Lesson 6 was stacking tables. And that was just kind of a random doodle. I got inspired. And I've been trying to make sure when I feel inspired to draw something, I, go ahead and take the time to draw it at least. Lesson 7 was advanced level cubes. It's another random drawing, just wanted to make sure I drew something. Same for this one. Lesson 8 was cool koalas, and shading with texture. Lesson 9 was the rose. And I have not got to lesson 10 yet. This is where we are currently. Now this one, I've put a little bit more love and care into. This was actually the first one that I decorated too. And, that inspired the decoration behind the other ones. But that's going to signify my starting set. So this is going to be like my official, to me, feels like my official starting as an artist. That's what these 3 sketchbooks will signify, overcoming imposter syndrome. And then everything in this sketchbook is not in chronological order, so sometimes I did go back and add, drawings I might have cut out and glued them to the sides, or I might have drawn something on a page that I might have skipped, so yeah, just so there's no confusion. Like this page right here. This is definitely a newer edition as opposed to this one, which was done in 2015. If you've been following along, you should know about these. Now this is actually something I made in my printmaking class. I just cut it down a little bit to be able to fit in this book because I had a few extra copies of this print. And then for a while I did use this in my animation class in college. That's why some of the pages were skipped, because we were supposed to skip pages in case we needed to scan anything into the computer. Now these were all done at work in 2022. I was just bored one day and we literally were not doing any work that whole day. We were like doing team bonding exercises. So I just decided to sketch my coworkers real quick, just to have fun. And I ended up liking all the sketches a little more than I thought I would, especially with me. That was fire. Like, I had braids then, and I feel like that looks exactly like me. But so this is my rubber hose comparison. I did this one in my college animation class and this one in my high school animation class. Like I said, lazy. That's supposed to be a tree. Like, you could tell I just real quick. Now, you've seen this guy in the bigger sketchbook, but this is my V1 of my executioner. This was my V2. And then V3 was in the big book. I also gotta, do her little side, as well as hers too. You saw her in the book. This was supposed to be a little tattoo idea for my grandma. I actually started it and then, did not finish it for a long time. And then once I started, sketching in this book again this year, I went back and kind of just finished it, like, real quick. It was still supposed to be a little different than this, but that's just my final product. This is actually one of my most recent ones. Like, this is actually, like, the newest one, technically. This one I did when I was first starting to get back into drawing in this book. Look at the detail. That's all pen. I was trying to challenge myself to, not sketch it out first, just not worry about mistakes and, just not take it so seriously, but at the same time show myself that I could still get a pretty dope piece of art without being perfect. And so I decided I was gonna start using this one just to sketch and actually learn things and, do studies. So this is part of my study of the female body. And here's another one. And this is a note to self to keep growing, that no matter what, as long as I'm working on my art, I'm improving. This is actually a character from somebody I follow on Instagram. His art's pretty fire and inspires me, so I decided I would copy the character, make it my own for a little bit of practice, add some of my own elements to it. Now this is technically the newest page that I'm working on. It's not done yet, but yeah. I also got challenged to do a couple portraits. And mind you, I hadn't done a portrait since this 2013. So, I just had to knock the dust off real quick, see what I could do. I got challenged to do my niece. And then right after that, I got challenged to do my little brother. And I was waiting on another challenge, that's why I skipped. And then I also did this. I got a little bit more to add to this, most likely, but yeah, this is where we are in this book. last but not least, my watercolor sketchbook. Now, I bought this one for a specific class. I don't know if I ended up not taking the class or just not using the sketchbook or what happened. But yeah, I never touched the sketchbook like once. And I decided to change that this year. So got some watercolor pencils and just went to work. So first, came up with this. I put these little words that I cut out of this little newspaper thing that I get from this store, this metaphysical store. And it just felt like it belonged. So when I painted the next piece, which I've had an idea for I don't know how many years, I decided to keep going with the theme and added some words to that one too. And this is all that I have in this one so far. As you can see, this one is a little more meticulously crafted. But yeah, we're going to be filling it up a lot more here soon. My goal is to, finish these, or at least be closer to finishing these by the end of the year. And on to some new ones that I purchased. As I was sitting here videotaping this eyeball, and I noticed the shelf that I painted made me completely forget about my mural journey. So I actually started painting out galaxies. My mom ended up getting a new house, and there was a room that I turned into my room at the house, and it had this weird door on it. So we were taking the room apart, and we took the door down, and I decided to spray paint galaxy on the door. That was the first time I ever did it, and I liked it, so I kind of just stuck with it. So I ended up painting a friend's wall. He commissioned it once he saw the door, and after that I ended up finding somebody that wanted a mural done in Oakland. I did a mural on a wall like this, and once I did that, I made this shelf, as well as my son's bookshelf. My bad, not bookshelf, his dresser. But yeah, I made this dresser for my son as well. I wish you could see the top. I got a bunch of stars that I glued on the top with his name on there. It's pretty dope, glow in the dark stars.